Changing the rear pads on the Ténéré 700 is very easy. All you need is a hammer, a 3mm or 1/8 inch punch, and a little bit of time. Even if I'm from Europe, I always love stuff that is actually made in the United States, and in this video, the hammer, the punch and the brake pads are all made in the United States. I've never had any issues at all with my rear brakes. They worked pretty well. The reason I went to a different style of brake pads is because they're made in the United States. The brake caliper is a floating caliper with a piston on one side, on the outside of the rotor, and it slides on two little pins, one in the front and one in the rear. The first part is to free up space between the brake pads and the brake disc. You are doing this by pushing the piston back into the caliper. What you're basically doing is moving brake fluid from the area behind the piston back into the brake reservoir, just above that rear brake pedal. Then you have to remove the little safety clip that keeps the pin in place, and the little punch is perfect in order to remove the clip. The two brake pads are held in place on the caliper by a pin, and the pin is held in place by two springs, one spring embedded onto the pin itself, and then you have the wire spring. A 3mm or 1/8 inch punch is needed to remove the pin from the caliper. A soft blow from a hammer, a little bit stronger than what I did here, that's all it takes for the spring in order to release. Remove the pin and remove the two pads. The lower thickness of the brake pad, including the backing, is 3.9mm at the rear. So on these pads there's another 5mm of routing to be done. When you're ready to mount the pads, just install the pin first and then you install the pad that's closest to the wheel. And make sure that the friction material faces the brake disc. And you probably have to push on the caliper in order to create a little bit more space for the brake pad. So before you install the other pad, just push the pin through the first pad so it stays in place. And then you just rinse and repeat the same thing with pad number 2. Once the pad fits into the slot in the front of the caliper, the hole at the rear of the pad should fit up with the little pin. Before you use the punch and the hammer in order to knock the little spring clip on the pin into place, make sure that the front of the pin is seated into the little hole. The punch is only 5 inches long, 12.5 centimeters. So it would make, if it was a little bit longer, it would be a lot easier, but it's not that hard. When you can see the complete hole for the little clip, then you know that the pin is far enough inserted. The curved part of the clip faces the rear of the bike. The last step is to move the brake fluid back from the reservoir back into the caliper. And you do that by just pushing down the brake pedal by hand a couple of times until it's firm again. It takes roughly 200 to 400 miles, that is roughly 300 to 600 kilometers, in order for the brake pads to mate onto the brake discs. Some of the manufacturers, they recommend heating up the pads in order to finish the embedding process. And this is done by slowing down from 60 to 20 miles per hour and doing 10 times in succession. That's roughly 100 kilometers an hour down to 30 kilometers an hour. But of course, always follow the manufacturer's instructions regarding your brake pads. Do not drive like a hooligan in the beginning after you change the pads, because for the first couple of miles, they're not going to perform nearly as close to as the pads you just removed. Thanks for watching. Have a good safe ride. Please subscribe. More videos to follow.